I think we're going to get started. Let's just say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, depending on when you're joining us. Thank you for taking the time in your busy schedules to tune in live. Before we start, some quick housekeeping. We're going to have time to answer any questions you have at the end of the webinar, so please ask them via the question box in your control panel at any time. We'll also be asking a few poll questions during the webinar that we invite you to participate in so we can get a better sense of where everyone is on their DXP journeys. If you have any technical difficulties, please get in touch via the chat options. Our host team is here to help. We are also recording this webinar and we'll share the recording in the next couple days, which you can feel free to share. But now let's get started. Today's topic is going headless, going composable, architecting the modern DXP, and we'll feature our special guests from Forrester, Joe Cicman, and Conor Egan, VP of Product from Contentstack. And a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to touch on what is a DXP, start with the basics, the elements of modern dynamic experiences. We'll talk about experience architectures and the modern DXP, and then just what is composable and what do we think is composable and what does Joe think is composable. Conor will talk a little bit about how Contentstack sees the composable DXP, and then we'll have some actions you can take now, and then we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And let me hand it over now to you, Joe. Welcome.
All right, thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to paint a picture for you. Having digital skills is important because the new connected consumer poses a challenge for brands, and digital business pros like you need to understand how your customers connect across 3 dimensions: devices, platforms, and channels, and then map your portfolio of experiences so that you're present where your customers are. Now, the model for thinking through your portfolio of experiences is something that we call the 3D connected consumer. These 3 dimensions, devices, platforms, and channels, now define how consumers are connected, and brands need to serve their customers wherever they are in these complex ecosystems. So you need to take a fresh look at how your customers connect as you craft your technology and platform portfolios. And that's because customers use combinations of devices, platforms, and channels that many firms don't support. So you need to understand your customers' digital ecosystems in order to map your portfolio of experiences to how your particular customers connect. And that's not a trivial endeavor. Customer journeys are not simple, and brands aren't in control of how the customer goes through that journey. So let's move on. Your digital experience platform is the technology stack upon which you build experiences to support buyer journeys that are nonlinear and in the buyer's control. And the talent that you employ to build these journeys, your practitioners, well, they need no-code flexibility built into their tools because they don't have time to constantly rely on developers. Now, companies of any background and any size can obsess over their customers. And these companies can rebalance their businesses to adapt as new opportunities come into view, or to be resilient when things like COVID disrupt their customers' businesses. And when you do this, you're like a pioneer, where being resourceful is more powerful than being full of resources. Now, the technology on its own doesn't magically make you win, just like how buying free weights alone won't make you physically fit. They're just an ingredient. They're just a means to achieve your goal, and that goal is your digital strategy. So we're here today to talk about digital experience platforms. So what exactly are they? Well, Forrester's definition is your DXP provides the architectural foundation and modular services for developers and practitioners to create, orchestrate, and optimize digital journeys at scale to drive loyalty and new commerce outcomes across owned and third-party channels. Now, what's the benefit of this technology? Well, we can simplify the framing of that question and just say your digital experience platform is how you engage customers. But now let's zoom out and set more context. So let's see what's next. So by metaphor, this product shown here is integrated experience. It's tightly integrated. And in certain circumstances, it works great. Like in your garage when you're working on your bike, or maybe when you're in the waiting room of an oil change shop. but you're not going to invite your friends over to watch The Mandalorian or the Super Bowl on it. And that's because as your audience gets larger, that screen is inadequate. But there's no way to add a larger screen to this DVD player. Oh, that's right. The Mandalorian isn't distributed on DVD. So this is tightly integrated, but it hasn't kept up with the times, and it's not upgradable unless you rip and replace the entire thing. And this is how digital experience platforms used to be developed by vendors. So let's take a look at what they look like today. But today, digital leading enterprises don't buy monolithic DXPs. And remember, even when they did, they added stuff to them and swapped stuff out, like the native search. Now, my recent research concluded that digital experience platforms still exist, but they're built by enterprises, not bought from vendors. And the technology stack that you assemble to deliver digital experiences is your digital experience platform. You'll compose your own digital experience platform using parts from multiple vendors, selected to deliver your distinct digital strategy. And the platform that's right for you doesn't come pre-assembled out of the box. And even if it did, the risk of implementing it all at once is just too great for your enterprise. You need ordinary components of a DXP, such as content, customer data, and experience front end. But you'll also need extraordinary components specific to your industry, like a travel booking engine instead of a retail cart, an electronic medical record system instead of an order history, and virtual interactive conference streams instead of static videos. So now we're going to take a poll. So Megan, what do we got up next?
Thanks, Joe, for setting the stage. So now we're going to take a poll. We'd love for you to answer, where are you on your DXP journey?
Want me to read these out for folks, Megan?
Yes, please.
All right. So number one, are you looking to modernize your current implementation? Are you actively investing in a new platform, or are you at the gathering requirement stage? Looks like we have some interesting responses coming in. A lot of people gathering requirements. So this is the perfect time to be attending this webinar.
Just give a little bit more time so we can get our good sample size. All right. Looks like we've got 64% are in the gathering requirements stage. So perfect. Let's move on to the next slide and go back to you, Joe.
All right, thanks. Okay, so let's break down what some of those ordinary components are. Now, your practitioners are going to work across a range of technology solutions, and Forrester distills digital experiences down to 4 core solutions. So starting at the top, understanding the customer with data, creating the experience with content, tailoring that experience to fit the context with marketing, and finally, delivering value with commerce. So let's go to the next. Now, how do you select what's right for you? In other words, how do you know what to buy? Well, think about your needs this way and assess yourself along 2 axes. Now, that first is the vertical axis. So is your development team expert in traditional on-prem tech for building monolithic enterprise systems, or are they skilled in microservices, APIs, cloud native, and serverless? Then along the horizontal dimension, look at your digital strategy. Do you engage customers the way most other businesses engage them? In other words, is the digital strategy you're running pervasive, or is it differentiated? Now, if your dev skills are traditional and you're running a digital strategy that's pervasive, then probably there's a software package that's made exactly for you, like that all-in-one TV, DVD, VHS player. But if you have a differentiated digital strategy, then there's probably not one do-it-all system for you. So you're going to need to buy those ordinary and extraordinary components and then compose them into a platform that meets the needs for your business. And since it's 2023, those components are going to be built on cloud native technology, and they'll be built to interoperate with one another following cloud native principles. So let's move on. Digitally native brands like Uber and Wayfair didn't grow up in an era of enterprise IT that controlled ERP, CRM, and bolted on websites. These digital natives see no hard distinctions between these siloed applications that they have to integrate. But most of today's large enterprises did grow up in an era of siloed systems. They're still transforming, and they struggle to deliver seamless customer journeys that rely on data from operational systems. To deliver great and consistent experiences in every moment, you need an integrated ecosystem, not point solutions for each department and channel. Now, this approach, which Forrester calls an experience architecture, aligns platforms, business practices, partners, and employees to serve customers excellently and consistently across their entire journey in the moments they choose. So let's dig into that a little bit. Now, when you bring creativity to how you think through your digital experience investments this way, you're like a pioneer, where being resourceful is more powerful than being full of resources. Now, what do I mean by more powerful? Well, Forrester has an assessment. You answer questions about your business operations, and we categorize you into being along a spectrum toward customer obsession. That spectrum starts off in a stage called customer naive. And then as your operations become more aligned around your customer, you become customer aware, the customer committed, and then ultimately customer obsessed. And customer obsessed companies grow faster, on average twice as fast as their competitors who are less customer oriented, even in a recession. Now, the customer obsessed operating model is how you orient your business around your customer. It contains clear explanations of what good looks like inside the best companies in the world. And this is the result of years of research by Forrester, which explains what great culture looks like, what great structure looks like, the characteristics of great people, processes, technology, and the way you need to think about metrics. Now, those 6 levers give rise to your ability to support 4 operating principles: to be customer-led, to be insights-driven, to be fast, and to be connected. And when you combine that with the right technology strategy, what Forrester calls a future fit technology strategy, what results is you having new ways of working and new ways that customers can engage with you. Now, in a future fit technology strategy, 3 core drivers, platforms, practices, and partners, give rise to 3 crucial capabilities. Capability to be adaptive, that's changing when you spot an opportunity. The capability to be resilient, that's changing when something exogenous like a pandemic or a geopolitical event happens. And the capability to be creative, that's being resourceful without being full of resources. And again, this comes to life in your businesses, new ways of working and new ways that customers can engage with you, but you have to do them both because the technology is in service to your customer-obsessed enterprise. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to be customer-obsessed without paper and pencil, but what I'm saying is you're not on this webinar to learn how to use last-generation business tools. An obsessive focus on customers paired with a future fit technology strategy results in new ways of working and new ways that customers can engage with your business. So let's move on. Okay, so if it's not a pre-integrated, tightly coupled, all-in-one, do-it-all system for your particular digital strategy, then what exactly is your digital experience platform? Well, my recent research concluded that an enterprise's digital experience platform is a system of applications and their underlying platforms brought together by various vendors and agencies, bound by APIs and events, connected through good data, which provides the foundation for experiences and apps to be rapidly built on top. Now, over time, as you digitalize more and more of your brand's distinct value proposition, you're going to need to reach farther and farther back into those back office systems that you use to operate your business. Bringing those systems into the mix, in other words, going far beyond content and commerce, will force you to think about your unification plans from a frame that we call an experience architecture, and your DXP charts the course to front and back office unity under an experience architecture. Okay, so we have another poll. What do we have up this time?
So our second poll is, what are the main drivers for modernizing your DXP? If you want to read those out, Connor, for the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one is you really want to focus on omni-channel experience creation, supporting all those different channels and devices. Maybe you are interested in faster time to market, the time it takes to get new content and experiences out. Maybe you're looking for improved cost structures, or all of the above. And I can already see that all of the above is very popular. So I will definitely dig into some of the ways that a modern DXP can help with each of these.
Why choose one when you can have it all?
Right.
Okay, share those results. And look at that, all of the above. Perfect. Okay, and now back to you, Joe.
All right, thank you. So what do great companies do with their digital experience platform? Well, customer-obsessed businesses discover what their customers consider to be the most valuable proposition by observing them, by talking to them, and by experimenting with their digital experiences until they see uptake and subsequent improvements in their customers' business. Now, I published a case study recently about some of these companies. In each of the cases, they had no idea what they were going to build. They started by listening to their customers. They prototyped. They worked until their customer's problem was solved, and then they scaled. And then they got the loyalty that drove sales volume. Now, this is the exact opposite of how many companies think about e-commerce, which is what ads and promotions do I need to run to get conversions? Now, the three innovators that I interviewed for that research asked, what are my customers' biggest pains? And can I solve those pains with digital tools? And then the sales volumes just happen. And this is what we mean when we say that customer-obsessed businesses with a future-fit technology strategy build platforms to deliver their businesses' distinct value proposition. You simply cannot buy that off the shelf from one vendor. You have to buy components and assemble them. You have to compose them and modify some to fit your style, and you have to make some components yourself. Now, some of you know that I ride BMX trick bikes, and that's why I so often tell you that I build my own bikes, because my bike is my platform, and you're going to build your platform that expresses your unique greatness as a business. Compose your own digital platform from parts you source from vendors, plus some of your own parts. Use that to digitalize your business's distinct value proposition and leverage partners along the way, and then grow by being customer obsessed. And so now I'm going to hand things over to Conor.
All right, thank you very much. And I can talk a little bit about our journey to initially headless CMS and then supporting a composable DXP. And I think everything we talked about is really relevant to this. I am getting married in a couple of days. There's a joke that I always tell my fiance hates, which is, buying a monolithic DXP is like getting into a marriage. You're going to be stuck there for at least 5 or 6 years. But she hates that. But anyway, there is a truth to that, which is there's kind of this cycle that you go through where you buy a large software platform that's going to be modeled around how you're doing your business now. And in 3 to 5 years, you're going to find that you're getting constraints there, and you're either going to have to do some kind of major version upgrade, or you're going to have to switch vendors completely. And that is very, very expensive for your business. So when digital practitioners used to think about this, it was really a build or buy, right? You're buying something out of the box, or you're building it yourself. And out of the box, we already talked about, that's where you get the DVD stuck to the television. And if you're building it, you're really on the hook to constantly be spending time with your engineering team, changing it and maintaining it. And we really feel like with Composable, it's the best of both worlds, and that you're getting these individual vendors that solve a very discrete problem, but you are able to swap them out and customize them. And when you do spend engineering time, it's really focusing on how do I get these platforms to play well together? How do I get that to be a seamless experience across all channels? And that omni-channel is something that Headless has always been great for. So if you look at this diagram on the right, this kind of charts our journey as initially a headless CMS and then a composable DXP. So we were one of the inventors of headless CMS. We used to be a services company. We used a lot of the big CMSs on behalf of our clients and found that there was a lot of limitations. It's very bespoke in how you need to work in your workflows. So our CTO and founder sent a quick email to our team and just said, let's make our own CMS. It doesn't need much. It needs to be able to support multiple channels. It needs to be API first. It needs to be cloud native. And then a couple of years later, we spun out Contentstack as a headless CMS. So that was going very well. But the one thing that we noted was sure, you have all these various Skittles that you're buying from different vendors, but there's still a lot of integration needed. And I think this goes to that diagram Joe had, which is you really needed a team that deeply understood microservices, API design. And so that was a little bit exclusionary of the people that could make that journey. So we were getting those early adopters that had that team and that mindset. But then we decided, hey, with both our technology and our people, we want more people to be able to make this journey to Composable. So if you look on that diagram on the right, it very much is intended to look like a spine, because we really think that our platform is the foundation for a Composable DXP. We are not a Composable DXP in its completeness. That's why there's all these other pieces that you need to add relative to your business. But we started with the Headless CMS. That's the one on the bottom. That's the one that, you know, replaces conventional content management. It's how do I put content in, get content out, workflows, permissions, all that kind of thing. And then we added a marketplace on top of that, because what we found was people inevitably are going to want to integrate. So our marketplace has one-click integrations to other vendors, but it also allows you to write your own customizations, because when you get into year 3, 4, 5 of either that marriage or that software platform, you're going to need to make changes. You're going to need to update it based on what's going on with your digital experience. So that helps you not just be stuck with what you're getting out of the box, but really cater every single team, every single business unit with the tools that they need to be successful. And then last year, we announced what we're calling our automation hub. This solves another problem that everybody that goes Composable has to solve, which is now I have all these individual pieces and they're all best in breed. I have the best e-commerce, I have the best analytics, I have the best CDP, personalization, whatever it is, but they all need to function together. And this is something that was kind of lost in the shift from Monolith to Composable. The great thing about Monolith is everything knows about the other pieces and it works together. The bad thing is you're working exactly like it was originally designed to work. Very difficult to divert from that. So Automation Hub is a cloud-based low-code automation and integration framework so that you can make, when you do an action in vendor X, it can trigger something to happen in Contentstack. Or if you do something in Contentstack, like change a workflow state, add a piece of content, it could ping out to all of these other vendors and make them do what they're supposed to do. So this really feels like a cohesive piece. So between those two pieces, we're really focused on giving you the glue to build this Composable DXP that enterprises need to build nowadays. And then the last piece up top, this is a recent announcement of ours. We also released a Contentstack launch product, which is a front-end hosting product. This is the first time that we're kind of venturing into something that you would traditionally go to another vendor for. What we found is a lot of people want to get going really quickly. So with Headless, there is no front end built in. But we added the ability to take your own code, whatever framework you want, be able to deploy it very quickly, connect it directly to Contentstack, and basically get something live on day one. So you can start ideating, you can send it to your legal team, your design team, your developers can start working. We kind of view it as going back to the car analogy, and I love Joe's analogies. I regularly steal them. But if you imagine that car, if you go to a car lot today, sure, you're buying the car, but it comes with tires on it. Right? You're going to have to drive it off the lot. No one says, here it is, put it on the back of a truck and go to a tire shop. And, a lot of people are going to want to customize beyond that, add snow tires, racing tires, and that's fine. And there's a bunch of really great technologies to do that. But with launch, we really see the ability to have an end-to-end solution on day one. And of course, it's well integrated with our marketplace, with our automation hub. And all of these allow you to build that stack that you really need. And just as importantly, be able to update that stack as your needs change. COVID is a great example. We have so many stories from customers whose business was completely turned on its head almost overnight. And the ability to be agile is really important. And then the last part of this slide I wanted to call out is, the other thing that we noticed, to the point of, hey, does my team have the expertise? How do I know what questions to ask? How do I know what to measure? What are my KPIs? What order should I be doing this in? And that's why we have a really big team of experts that kind of help people go on that journey, because it can be very intimidating when in the old world you had one neck to choke, everything was kind of done for you. How do you replace that? And that's where we have a lot of great content and people that help enterprises go through that journey. And we've helped some that are hundreds of years old, these companies that have never even thought about going online and going omni-channel. So that's kind of how we see ourselves a little differently, and why we think we've taken what started with Headless CMS and really created that foundation, as Joe says, to build around and build this modern DXP and get all the benefits of it. And we did do a total economic impact. So we measured with our customers what the impact of going composable was. And the main things that stood out, online traffic and site conversion went up. This is largely based on companies' ability to move quickly, test things, iterate, update the experiences as the customer has different needs. Also saw an 80% reduction in content-related development time. And this is really getting those practitioners to be self-sufficient, right? If you are waiting for a development team, which probably has a whole backlog of other things they're supposed to be delivering, to get out a new piece of content, say you're running an event series and you want to stand up, a dedicated experience very quickly, or power an iPhone app, the longer you have to wait for developers, the slower that content's going to get out. And then ultimately a 90% reduction in time to publish. And this is where things like that automation hub help, where you can hit a button, you can update your search index, you can invalidate your cache, you can do all these things very quickly. And obviously the faster you can publish, the faster you can move and the faster you can iterate. And so here's a visual representation of just how we see ourselves at Contentstack. So in the top left, we do have the legacy DXPs. We've talked about some of the drawbacks that they have, which is they've built all of the workflows, all the pieces are tightly coupled, very difficult to break apart. In the bottom left, we have legacy CMSs. So these are providers that are just providing the CMS, but it still is not a composable CMS. In the bottom right, we just have point headless CMS solutions. And this is where I mentioned the problem of your team is really going to be on the hook to do a lot of integration, do a lot of glue code. And then we have what we're calling a composable DXP, where we think that we are in the top right, which is, yes, all the benefits of composable, but also all of the tools to help you assemble. Because we really looked around and raised our hand and said, hey, there's a lot of headless CMSs out there, but now the big problem is, how do I make that the backbone and the foundation of your new DXP? And that's why we have been building out the tool set and the people to help customers make that journey.
Thank you so much. And we have one more poll. And to round us out, what is holding you back from investing more in DXP technology?
All right, and we have 3 choices here. One is a lack of digital skills. So that is more of a people issue. 2 is budget constraints. There's a concern that it's going to be more expensive than what you're doing now. And then lastly, buy-in from management. And this is something we haven't touched on much, but this whole concept of composable is not just a technology thing. It's also how you organize your company, how you think about your business. So it's an important thing to call out, and something that really successful companies that go on this journey, it's kind of more of an all-in approach. Like, how do we modernize ourselves as a business, and how do we have the technology to match that? So this poll looks like it's pretty evenly distributed. So we've got some worries across the board there.
All right, yep. Fairly even. They're all concerns. So let's move into a little bit more about how you get started and what different issues different people will be seeing depending on where they're coming from.
All right, so Conor, your marriage analogy has got my mind going. Tell your fiance that you will have a modern marriage where you are versionless and you get better every day, keeping your relationship as a North Star, which means she doesn't have to replace you, because you're going to get better without needing to be upgraded. Okay.
All right, that's pretty slick. I don't exactly know what a composable marriage would be though, so I don't know what other parts I'm adding.
Stop short of that. Stop
Okay.
short of that.
Got it.
Right? Just say old school and new school. Okay. Anyway, so back to the show. All right, folks. So how do you even get started with this approach of architecting your DXP? So here's 3 starting points for 3 different states that you might be in. So if you're starting from scratch, rethink your DX as a set of competencies and capabilities. And experience design is one of those capabilities. So engage your customer experience colleagues and grasp the CX vision of what experiences your platform needs to enable for the business. So, Conor, why don't you tell us which of your clients started from scratch?
Yeah, we could just hop to the next slide here. So I chose a really good example of this, which is Dawn Foods. So Dawn Foods provides raw materials to bakers. So if you have a donut shop, they're the ones that take an order, come by with a big truck and dump off a bunch of flour for you. And just a few years ago, they had 0 online presence, no product catalog, no ability to transact online. They'd been doing it this way for over 100 years. And we had a great champion that came in. He's done digital transformation in a number of places. He said to the board, hey, nothing comes for free. I'm going to need a budget. We're going to get some new software, and we're going to transform into a modern business. We're going to allow bakers to go online, to discover what's available. And then we have all this opportunity to do cross sells, deliver recipes to them, content. This is all something that was not possible. And so one nice thing about starting from scratch, to your point, Joe, is you start with what you want the experience to be, right? So they're thinking, where are my customers? What are the touch points? What do they need to do? And then from that experience, they backed into what are the pieces that we're going to need. So we're going to need a CMS. We're going to need some way to process payments, manage inventory. And one nice thing about starting from scratch, even though it sounds a little more daunting, is you can really just go from 0 to the experience that you need. You might do it in phases, but you're not sort of stuck with some legacy stuff that you need to keep going because we don't know how to, take this experience down. And the people that built it left a long time ago, and we don't know exactly how to operate it. So within just a couple of years, they're now doing 50% of their orders online. They're constantly adding new ways to promote other products so that you can say, hey, I want to add a bear claw donut, add this to my cart, and it's going to add all the different pieces. And this is especially helpful, during COVID when you don't want random people showing up in your closed bakery trying to bring a bunch of flour to you. So really great transformation story of an old company going right to their desired end state for their customer and doing it very quickly using a Contentstack and a composable architecture.
Great. And the composable marriage would be adding pets.
Okay, got it.
Yes, to the family.
That's going to go over a lot better.
There we go. All right. Okay. So if you are rationalizing the chaos, employ a product mindset. So deliver your platform like it's the product your business uses to create all of its digital experiences, because it is. So, and as your platform's usage patterns change, focus your center of excellence on capabilities that get used, reused, and shared across all experiences that your platform delivers. So Conor, which of your clients rationalize the chaos?
Yeah, so I chose Iceland Air for this one. And I know it's an early plug for ContentCon, but we had a couple of folks from Iceland Air on our stage last year. And one of the ways that we benchmark, hey, are we being successful? Our favorite thing at Contentstack is finding out that our champions and our change makers get promoted. And so every time we hear that happen, sometimes it's happened multiple times to the same person, we all are high-fiving internally because when you go in and you say, hey, I want to change the processes here and make them better, it can be a little challenging at first, especially when there are all these different pieces and you've worked in a certain way for a while. So you wouldn't necessarily think of an airline company as a big content company, but they do need to constantly be updating a lot of their digital footprint. And with their legacy CMS, it was taking weeks to potentially change the experience for the customer. And obviously travel can change very quickly with different disruptions. I think there was a volcano that went off in Iceland that probably completely changed their business for a little while. So they brought on Contentstack really with a focus on what is the experience going to be for our not developers. I mean, we have great tool set for developers, but for these content editors that need to get content out quickly. And in the case of Icelandair, they're supporting dozens of languages. So they were able to start with the experience for their internal users, focus on the product that they needed to move quickly. And as a result, were able to reduce their publishing times 90%, and also automate a lot of their translations. So another great case for something like Automation Hub, when they make a change, they can send that to a best in breed translation vendor like a Smartling, and get that back within minutes and move a lot faster. So really great story of a couple champions that raised their hand and said, hey, I want to make life easier for our practitioners because I think it's going to have real business outcomes. And they were successful in doing that.
Excellent. Okay. And finally, if you're scaling your enterprise platforms, compete on merit, not muscle. Okay, what I mean by that is scaling to you means change to others. So focus on how your platform empowers your colleagues, not on standardization for its own sake. Use a strategist to work with your partners in the business units to help them build their priorities, strategies, and roadmap. And this requires diplomacy on your part. So Conor, which of your clients scaled their enterprise platform?
Yeah, so I chose 1-800-Flowers as an example here. So 1-800-Flowers, everyone it's been around for a while. It's a very seasonal business traditionally, Mother's Day and holidays. But they actually own a lot of brands that you would also recognize. And they had this problem that probably a lot of people on the call do. They are multi-brand where, this one's on WordPress, this one's on Drupal. I have no way of sharing best practices, of creating efficiencies across all of these different brands. So they set out to do some standardization, but still allow the individual brands to operate how they would like. And so their original goal was to migrate 1-800-Flowers, which is a huge site, over to Composable and Contentstack in the first year. They ended up moving 4 of their brands over in the first year. And then they wanted to do another 5 the next year. And I believe they did 9 the year after that. And how they did this was figuring out the commonalities between the different brands. You don't want to shoehorn into a brand, into a business unit, exactly how they work, but there is a lot of commonalities. So they were able to sort of create a site factory, if you will, that had the structure for the site. You can do that with Headless very easily with different content models and the fact that it's schemaless. You can sort of set the basic schema, spin up a new brand, and then apply those customizations that are specific to that brand. And so they've almost doubled the amount of brands they wanted to move over because they were able to do that strategic view of, all right, so what is the same? What is the difference between these brands? How do we enable them to do what they do best? And it was really fantastic timing because once again, the pandemic, another great example, everybody's at home. They're not going out to restaurants. They're not spending as much money on services. So they had a huge influx of business during that time as everybody was not visiting each other, flying across the country, but instead sending flowers. Now, as we're coming out of that, their business needs to adapt again. And so they're really focused on how do we do A/B testing and personalization and work on different pricing and work on different offers to try and get out of what is normally kind of a seasonal business into something that customers engage with all the time across lots of channels. And so it's a really great example of, hey, even though we have 20 some odd brands working here, we can learn from them, learn from each other, and then be able to apply those really quickly because we're on a consistent platform. So really great story of getting through the pandemic, emerging stronger on the other side, and then having the tools to continue to learn and get better. And I gave a quick plug for this, but we do have a customer conference coming up in Austin, May 8th through 10th. We did our first one last year. Everyone that has attended said it was the most fun they've ever had. We got some enthusiastic people on my product team that will be there. We're going to do some deep dive architecture sessions. One of the best things about it, though, is a lot of customers like the types that I just mentioned. We like putting them on stage. You don't need to listen to me talk anymore. They get up there, they talk about what they've learned, how they went through this journey, and you can learn so much, whether you attend in person, whether you attend virtually. It's really indispensable to be able to see a business like yours emerge on the other end and then have them be gracious enough to share what they learned along that journey and how you can apply that to what you're doing. So we'd love for you to register, attend online if you must, in Austin if you can. It's going to be a great time and a lot to learn.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think we have a little bit of time for a few questions. Feel free to put them into the question box if you have any questions. And I'm going to start with, where do I start with going composable? Who wants to take that one?
I've got a couple of thoughts there.
Okay.
Start by thinking about how to decouple your monoliths. So you can start by going headless. And what I mean by that is it kind of depends on where you're starting. So let's say you're starting from an e-commerce platform, then that means separating the front end from the back end. However, if you already have a traditional CMS front-ending your e-commerce, then you can split the experience layer from the content layer. So think of that as like how you would do a mobile app. Alternatively, you can start from scratch with the region or campaign-specific site. Starting from scratch, let me say it a little bit differently. You can start a new stack from scratch, and but the downside of that is that for a period of time you'll have separate stacks until you can reunify your architecture. Conor, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good starting point, and we see both types of customers. We have some that come and say, "Hey, we're ready to rip off the Band-Aid. We're going to do the whole hog replacement," but it is very common to say, "Hey, let's get our feet wet in one particular area." Maybe it's a single business unit, a single use case, and start to learn by doing that. And then what you can do is gradually move pieces into the headless environment, swap out pieces that make sense. If you do that, I would go in with very clear expectations of what you're measuring, right? Like if you say we can't move fast enough on our existing DXP, our existing CMS solution, I would really make sure you can measure, let's prove out, because you're going to have to get executive alignment. You're going to have to sell this up the chain. You're going to have to get the mindset to change. And it's not just enough to say, hey, we got the project up. Here's the website. Here's the mobile app. You really need to arm yourself with, hey, we had a proposition that this would allow us to move faster, that this would be the impact for the business, and then show that. And then you can make the case to kind of eat more of your architecture and have the entire business start to work that way. So we do see both. And I think, if you can do it piecemeal, that's great as well. But Joe kind of laid out a good path there.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for one more. What are the most common challenges that customers face when trying to modernize their DXP?
I'll kick it over to you, Joe. I know we talked about some of them.
Yeah, a lot of the challenge I see is the decision of where to start, and that's because it really is different for everyone. And related to that, cutting through the noise is really tough because there are a lot of vendors, new and old, out there who are, trying to influence you. And the older vendors, what I have found, who don't have cloud native, they're going to give different advice than those that are cloud native. So my recommendation is that you engage actually with a service provider that has experience in modernizing, not just implementing or extending DXPs.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great partners that can help as well. If you need somebody that has done this before, we're trying to offer a lot of content ourselves and create sort of academy type content where you can learn best practices. But there's a lot of partners that will help you through this transition. And again, hearing it from people that have already done it before is a great start. But you really need to go into it, and this goes back to Joe's earlier slides, knowing what you want to get out of it. And that starts with the customer. So I think you made a good point, which is composable for composable's sake isn't really the point of doing it. It's because it's going to have some outcome for your business. And then if you start with those first principles, then it sort of helps clarify, hey, what are the next things that we should be adding, or what should we be replacing? Because you're always thinking in the context of the outcome for your customers. So it gets a little easy to get hung up on the technology, but in the same way that on the product side, we think, what are we delivering for our customers? What are they trying to get done? and the technology is sort of in service of that. It's very much the same way here in Composable, because your customer doesn't care that you're composable. Your customer cares that they have a really good outcome and can transact with you everywhere and get great content. So don't lose that in the process as you're mapping out exactly what you hope to accomplish.
In that vein, we just had one more question come in. What are the most useful OKRs, objectives, and key results when migrating from a monolith to Composable?
I'll let you start again, Joe.
Wow. I'm not convinced that that the OKRs are related to the actual technology migration. You already have OKRs, and for your business, and some of them are impeded by your technology. And so I think that's the lens that I would view it through, is take your existing OKRs, identify the ones that you're not meeting, and ask the 5 whys and trace back to find the ones that really are inhibited by the technology. And you may have to, I mean, you may find like 5 or 6 of those, and the technology may be the 3rd or the 4th or maybe even the 5th why. But I think what you want to avoid is inventing an OKR to justify your migration. Your OKRs are as they are, and your technology is in service to those. So find the ones where your technology are preventing them, and then focus on those. Because at that point, everybody has already bought into the OKRs. Like, look, this is exactly what we need to be doing. Here's the whole chain of them. And you could say, look, we can do better on these, which roll up to these themes. We can do better at doing what we've already said we're going to do if we can fix the technology, because the technology is going to unlock the following. That's how I would think about it.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. I mean, we've talked about some of the benefits, but maybe like time to publish isn't so in support of any of your OKRs for this year. So I could throw out some benefits that you see, but those benefits, like Joe said, if they're not there at the start of the year, then they're somewhat invented. So look at where you're falling short, and then try and map what the technology can do to solve that existing issue. And then that's where you really need to focus. And as you implement the technology, what you have to keep your eye on, because you've already decided, hey, this is going to support an existing OKR, an existing company goal. And you already do have that buy-in, because everybody wants to hit their OKRs by the end of the year. And so you'll get a lot more support when you say, this transition we're going through is going to help us do it, and here's why, as opposed to, now let's all worry about this other thing that I'm going to be able to improve by going composable.
Great.
That was a
so
great
much.
question.
Yeah.
Really good question that you asked.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're coming up on our time here. Thanks, Joe and Connor, for taking those questions. Thanks for everyone for attending. We will send you the details and recording in a follow-up. And again, thank you all for taking the time to join us today. It's been a great conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. See you in Austin.